Good afternoon, everyone. This is Mike O'Malley here with the off-season edition of the Hurricane Outlook and Discussion for December 30th, 2020, recorded around 1:15 p.m. Eastern Time. Happy holidays to everyone out there. Hope your holidays are going very well. So far, starting off today with a wide look across the Atlantic Basin. Not a lot going on as we would suspect for this time of the year. Some showers and thunderstorms along a shear convergence line out here across the northern parts of the main development region, but nothing expected to get going across that region. You can very clearly see what we do have is a ridge of high pressure that's building out across portions of the high seas of the Atlantic right here. And again, this is pushing a lot of onshore flow across portions of northern Florida. So it is going to be a little bit of a breezy day, but it is going to be warmer as the southerly flow and the southeasterly flow around this does resume. So temperatures right now outside are roughly about 80 degrees, so it is much warmer than the 30s we had the other day. So certainly in a lot better shape across that region. And elsewhere, we have a powerful storm system that's going to be developing today. This is going to bring winter weather conditions to parts of South Texas. Yes, far south, western Texas could see winter storm conditions, and winter storm warnings are up for that region. And even for parts of Oklahoma, winter storm watch is in effect. And then across the deep south tomorrow, there's a risk for severe weather and tornadoes, mainly within that enhanced risk area. And we'll take a look at that here in a moment. Now, taking a look here at the sea surface temperature anomaly map updated as of yesterday, December 29th, we can see a couple of things have been happening since the last time we kind of spoke here. Again, we continue to see a La Nina event out here across the ENSA regions, really the Nino 3.4 region. But notice what's occurring out across here. If we look back towards South America, we can see that we're starting to see the signs of a warming trend. And this is because, and we'll talk about this here in a moment, that the surface here, really, there's nothing down past the surface. So you had a fairly stout westerly wind event, which really kind of knocked down a lot of this, surface cooling, and now you're starting to see some up or downwelling causing some warmer waters. So this will kind of wax and wane over the next several weeks. But if we actually look at the grand scheme of things in the Nino 3.4 region, this is courtesy of Levi Cowan's tropicaltidbits.com, you can see that based on the CDAS methodology, which is just basically a different way of measuring the sea surface temperatures and the anomalies, etc., just different calculations, but roughly about the same here. We can see that the contributor in the Nino 3.4 index, which if we go back here, that is roughly this area here. That is the Nino 3.4 region. So that's kind of where we're looking at. And we can see that this Nino 3.4 region has remained relatively steady over the past several months, dating all the way back to October, where we were in, again, this kind of weak La Nina. Now we're kind of hovering roughly about -1 degree Celsius below the long term average. And this is important because, again, what we have right now, and what we'll look at here in a minute, most of this is confined to the surface. And again, that's very important. But generally speaking, we are still well within the La Nina threshold at -1 degree Celsius below the long term average at this point. So the long term trend over the past several months has been steady, but we'll probably start to see a climb as we get towards January, February, March, April, etc., into the spring. Now, as far as the main development region of the Atlantic Basin goes, again, much of the same story here. This is roughly about zero point 0.4 degrees Celsius above the long term average. You can actually see where we had this little bit of a down spike here. This is some easterly winds and some of the trade bursts that came associated with all those hurricanes. And then we could see kind of the rise here, a little bit of a downfall, another rise, a little bit kind of that. But generally, we've been kind of going on a sort of an uptrend and then just kind of hanging out here around zero point 0.4 degrees Celsius above average. So we're still definitely running above average in the Atlantic Basin in the main development region, which again roughly correlates to this area in through here. So we're still running above average, and most of the Atlantic Basin is, but that will be starting to get cooled off here as we progress in towards the spring months until we start to get really the warming to occur once again. Now, this is what we were talking about in terms of the depth here, and this is very important because at the very surface here, you can tell if we actually just look at the anomalies that what you really have, and this is mainly focused on the Nina 3-4 region. Notice where all of the cooler anomalies are located, up here at the surface. You notice once you start getting down by about 50, by about 150 meters or so, which is roughly right here, you're actually picking up mostly positive to neutral anomalies. So what this really indicates is that most of the cooler anomalies, and you can actually see here at the very surface at 0 meters, this is the La Nina event. Not down here. These are all mainly warmer to, kind of basically neutral conditions. But right there at the surface at 0 meters, that's where your La Nina event is. And you can see kind of this La Nina event here with these sea surface temperatures. But again, it's kind of important because what we're really looking for is something that is, we want some depth to this La Nina. The fact that we do not have that depth is something that would definitely point me in a direction to say, okay, well, we might have the potential to see somewhat substantial warming once we get into the later parts, into next spring. Certainly, if we get a trade reversal of the wind, we could see some pretty drastic warming with um, you know, some of these anomalies at depth here, especially about 150 meters. Now, again, this would take a little bit because they have to get all the way over here, then all the way up, then all the way out here. So it would take several months, and that's kind of the preface here. But here's the very important thing. So what we're looking at here is the 850 millibar zonal wind anomalies. And basically everywhere in here is all easterly wind. Everywhere within the orange and red, this is all your westerly wind. So you can go all the way back to the 30th of November, so right before the end of the hurricane season, and we can see that we had mostly easterly winds out across the really the ENSO regions. This is basically confined to the Eastern Pacific. That right here is the Western Pacific, and then this over here is the Atlantic and the Atlantic Main Development Region. So we can see that where we are confined and going all the way out to January 4th, most of the forecast is calling for a big easterly trade surge across this region. And that's the one thing that's really allowed for the La Nina pattern to actually persist and not just fall apart. And we can see what happens when things kind of do, like especially out across here, when you get those trade reversals where you're getting more so of some westerly wind and some upwelling or some downwelling rather. You're going to get some of these warmer anomalies to quickly pop up here, but this trade surge that we're in and will continue to be in is certainly very prevalent and should maintain the La Nina conditions, at least at the surface. So that is certainly something to kind of be mindful of as time goes on. Now, the one thing that is very important is, I think, where we're kind of heading here. And this is the CFS, the Climate Forecast System, and this is the version 2, the forecast for the Nina 3-4 region and the sea surface temperature anomalies. So we can see this black line right here, this solid black line, is where we've come through January of 2020 and now persisting into almost January of 2021. So this roughly spans about a year of observed conditions. And we can see that we were kind of in that weak El Nino phase, and we quickly dropped off towards a La Nina. The dashed black line is kind of the mean of all of the ensembles and where we could be heading into October of next year. So you have all of the ensembles here, and this dashed black line is kind of the mean of that. Now, you can see what's very interesting here is that the CFS forecast, according to the mean forecast, has a lot of it. It does definitely climb, but it starts to peak out here towards April and then doesn't really gain much and stays kind of in a cool neutral towards the weak La Nina phase by next year's hurricane season. However, if we kind of look at some of the if you look here at some of the ensembles, you can see that a handful of them do bring this in towards maybe even a weak El Nino phase. Now, the very key thing here is that if we did see any El Nino phase, again, occurring by, let's just say, like July, the atmosphere does take several months to kind of actually get its act together and basically be in that state, meaning that we have some time differential. So if we're not in a very strong El Nino event, or even an El Nino event at all, by, let's just say, late July, I don't think we're going to really have any problems in terms of next year's hurricane season regarding that. However, there's still a lot that we don't know yet. And the fact of the matter is, we're not going to know a lot until we get really into this upcoming spring. Um, we're only roughly about 60 or so days away from that. So, still a little while to go. But spring is rapidly approaching. We're almost now kind of into the thick of the winter season. And before you know it, spring will be here. So, we're definitely getting closer as each day does go by. Now, turning our attention towards lower 48 weather, we told you we would talk about this. There is the threat for severe weather tomorrow out across the southeastern United States and the Gulf Coast, mainly across portions of Louisiana. Unfortunately, places that are recovering from the multiplicative hurricane impacts from this year have to deal with another round of severe weather tomorrow, with an enhanced risk running from roughly about Shreveport all the way through portions of Lake Charles out all the way towards portions like New Orleans, a slight risk all the way to near Tuscaloosa and Birmingham, through portions of Mobile and the Western Florida Panhandle. This will be, again, a threat mainly for tornadoes tomorrow, and a couple stronger tornadoes cannot be ruled out entirely as the day progresses. So we do have some things to really watch there as we progress with time. Elsewhere, again, we do see that there is the threat for severe weather tomorrow, and again, also the threat for some winter weather activity out across portions of southwestern Texas and out across portions of the Midwest and Oklahoma and Kansas. Flash flooding potential all the way through from portions of the Gulf Coast of Texas, all the way through portions of the Arklatex and in through Arkansas. So it is certainly a busy day out there, and will probably be even busier tomorrow. And of course, tomorrow I will cover the severe weather aspect of things out across Louisiana. So stay tuned for that. All right. With that being said, I hope you all have a great rest of your afternoon and evening. Of course, I am Michael O'Malley. I'll talk to you guys again some more tomorrow.